28851, turn right, heading 180. Order 14 Papa, turn right 245, report localizer established.
Hey everyone, welcome back to DJ's Aviation and another episode of my Aviation News Weekly series. While I'd love to do this series more often, some weeks are slower than others in regards to news, which can make it quite difficult to get an episode like this up. As always, what I'll do is list the topics in the pinned comment with the timestamp so you can move to the stories you like the best rather than having to sit through the whole video if you don't wish to. Of course, you are more than welcome to. In this episode, I've got some super interesting stories to share with you all, including one on Kenya Airways. I also discuss Arkia Israeli Airlines, China's Southern quitting SkyTeam, the out-of-control E190, some more news on Project Sunrise, so definitely stay tuned. We begin, however, with a story in relation to Kenya Airways, an airline which actually just featured on the channel for launching new services to New York. This route was set to be groundbreaking and would give passengers direct access to not only Kenya, but America. It would also allow for easier travel and connectivity. However, just days after the service started, bad news has hit in regards to load factors. The flight will now not operate as many times weekly due to these poor load factors. When speaking to the Business Daily, an official for Kenya Airways said, "The winter schedule for all our flights took effect from October 2018 and will run until March the 30th, 2019. We cancel flights that are not commercially viable, so this is not unique to this route." The service was originally daily, but it's now being reported that it'll be brought back to around 3 times weekly. On the inaugural flight, for example, only 100 of the 234 on board actually paid for the ticket. The rest of the aircraft was full of government officials and media who didn't have to pay for this flight. The worst news though is that 10 scheduled flights have now been cancelled throughout this month. The decision to cancel these flights comes as the airline believes it's not feasible to fly on these days because of these extremely poor load factors. But the funny thing is, Kenya Airways reports that they already knew they would be cancelling services in November before the inaugural flight was even launched, which in my opinion is hard to believe because ticket sales can change drastically, especially if the flight is taking place 2 months later than when you're cancelling it. Meanwhile, a flight on the 2nd of November looked to be almost empty, with someone tweeting that there were 45 people on board, and it allowed for people to just roam around the cabin. Obviously, this is a big win for passengers, but not so much for the airline. Ultimately though, the concern is that they seem to be only relaunching daily services in the summer because they believe Kenyans won't want to experience the cold of New York during the winter months, and hence they are decreasing some of the frequencies. What makes this more interesting though is that Kenya Airways were talking about further expansion to the likes of Atlanta and Florida when they did launch this New York route. We still don't have any word on whether they will actually launch these services, but it does seem that their service to New York isn't performing too well. While you could certainly blame the weather, it does seem odd that they would then actually launch it in October and not, let's say, in March. Moving on, we saw a new agreement signed at the 2018 Bahrain Air Show for the A320neo jets. No surprises there. The order came in from Saudi Gulf Airlines and was for 10 of the jets. At list prices, the new deal is worth $1.1 billion US. It is worth mentioning that most carriers get a discount on their order, but that's never usually publicly revealed. While this order is new, it's actually unclear whether it was part of an unidentified customer order at the 2018 Farnborough Air Show. For reference, during the Farnborough Air Show, hundreds of aircraft orders were all listed as unidentified customers, making it of course rather difficult to figure out who ordered what, and it made it certainly difficult to report to you all. These new A320neos, once delivered though, will aid Saudi Gulf Airlines with expansion regionally but also internationally. Arkia Israeli Airlines has taken delivery of the world's first A321LR. The Airbus A321LR is the latest version of the A321 family and offers carriers flexible operations with its ability to fly long range. Tel Aviv-based carrier Arkia Israeli Airlines were founded in 1949 as Israel Inland Airlines and have chosen Airbus to take them forward in the future, with also 2 orders placed for the A330-900neo. The airline also operates the likes of the E190, E195 and the 757. This is the first of 3 A321LRs to join the airline. Arkia fitted their A321LRs with 220 seats in a single class layout, that class being economy. Arika's aircraft sport an incredible vibrant livery, which is one of the best. It's also worth mentioning the A321LR features that very clean and nice bandit mask, which is on the likes of the A330neo and partially on the A350. Meanwhile, another order came in for an aircraft that I actually don't usually cover, the Lockheed Martin F-35, and it was a sizable one to say the least. The preliminary contract is set to be worth some $22.7 billion US and will be for a whopping 255 F-35 jets. The jets will go to the US military, but also its various allies. The deal is a huge one for the F-35 program and will keep it in production for a very long time. In turn, these new orders will actually aid Lockheed Martin in keeping their prices down and potentially attracting either existing or new customers to order more of the aircraft or jets. Currently, the likes of Australia, Israel, Turkey, Norway, Belgium, Britain, and more have orders placed for the jet. The F-35 is a single-seat, multi-role fighter and is a fifth-generational combat aircraft. The F-35 has been designed to perform both ground and air attack missions and visited Australia for the first time during the 2017 Avalon Air Show. Currently, it's penciled in to make a return at the 2019 edition. During the past week, we also witnessed another incident involving an Air Astana Embraer aircraft. I previously did cover this on the channel, but to those that may have missed it, here is a brief recap. Pilots of an Air Astana ERJ-190LR reported they had lost control of the aircraft. The flight was known as KC-1388 and originated in Lisbon. According to air traffic controllers, the pilots reported a total loss of control after multiple exchanges with them. Shortly after this, two F-16s were scrambled to the jet. PK-KCJ, the aircraft in question, had planned a sea ditching as they believed this was the best option. However, another alternate option was an emergency landing if the weather was good enough for a visual approach. Communications further indicated just how adamant the pilots were on ditching the aircraft in the sea. They said it well over 20 times. A lot of people questioned how the aircraft managed to land if the pilots had lost control of the aircraft, but recent video has emerged showing the aircraft struggling to land and the incredible work by the pilot to actually get the aircraft down. While I'd certainly love to share the footage, due to copyright I cannot. Hopefully I can remember to put a link to the video in the description below so you can go and check it out. It's worth mentioning that this aircraft was actually out of service for around a month getting maintenance in Lisbon. This was its first flight back. Many, including myself, have gone on to question whether it was actually fit to fly. Certainly speculation is never good, but you can't help but think to yourself, was it actually ready? The past week also meant we learnt a whole lot more about Project Sunrise. The biggest take from this new story was that CEO Alan Joyce is adjusting his requirement for the aircraft that they plan on ordering. The A350-1000 and 777-8 are the two aircraft in contention, but for years now, Joyce has actually wanted to be able to seat 300 passengers on the aircraft that will be doing these Sydney to London flights non-stop. He hasn't backed down from this either and has challenged both Airbus and Boeing to provide an aircraft which can do so. Now, Joyce has confirmed that they will look at options below the 300-seat mark, as the airline believes this is no longer achievable for what they want. Our final story for the week comes from China Southern. I briefly covered them, but if you haven't seen that video, that is why we have this and also why I'm going to make it a little bit more brief for you. Short and sharp, as they say. After much debate, this week we saw China Southern confirm that they'd be leaving the SkyTeam alliance, effective from January the 1st, 2019. However, it will take them the entirety of that year to completely leave, with a lot more to figure out. The decision comes as the airline wants to focus more on their own company, rather than that of SkyTeam. In addition to this though, tensions have been running high, with the relationship between China Eastern and fellow SkyTeam member Delta and the Air France-KLM group not the best you could say. The recent investment to purchase a stake by American Airlines, a One World member and Delta rival, further escalated tensions and brought about the inevitable. It is still unclear though whether China Southern will link up with American in the One World alliance in the near future, but currently it does appear that they just want to focus solely on their own airline. As I like to say though, in this industry, you can never say never, because we really don't know what the future holds. That's going to conclude another episode of Aviation News Weekly. I know a lot of you really enjoy this series, so I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in and your continued support. We're closing in now on 150,000 subscribers, and if you haven't hit that subscribe button already, feel free to do so. I very much look forward to you joining me in the next video.